Hey there, it's Seb Frey here with another exciting episode of It's a Seb Show. And today I want to talk about a very hot topic, which is fire insurance for your home. Now, this is really important if you're a homeowner, if you're a home seller, and if you're a home buyer. This is something that's coming up and biting a lot of people, and I want to talk about it because it's really, really very important. Now, as you know, there have been these horrible wildfires that are going on right now. In California, there's dozens of them or hundreds of them right now actively burning. Of course, last year we saw the skies turn orange over large parts of Northern California due to the immense wildfires that were going on. It's become a real issue for many, many people. So here's what I want to say about that. Even if you don't live in a forest, even if you live anywhere kind of near a forest, you may find that your insurance rates have gone up considerably, and you may find it's actually not even possible for you to get insurance on the open market anymore. There's this thing called the WUI, right? The Wildland Urban Interface, right? And that's basically anywhere where like residentially zoned neighborhoods or whatever are close to forests, right? And what does close mean? I think it's within like 5 or 7 miles, right? So obviously, if you were to look in California, there's a whole bunch of neighborhoods which are within 5 or 7 miles, or however the state defines it, of a forest, right? So that's the wildland urban interface. There's lots of properties that are very close there, and many of those properties are at a heightened risk for fire, whether or not you think about it. And I'm reminded of, like, in Santa Rosa, like, what year was that? 2017 or 2018? I mean, a Trader Joe's burned down, right? I mean, like, this was like a deeply suburban area, right? Where, like, hundreds of homes were lost, right? Normal, ordinary, everyday, like fire hydrants, kids riding the streets, down the streets on their bicycles, right? Normal looking places that just completely devastated by wildfire. So even if you don't live in the middle of a forest, you should know that the actuarial tables are saying that probably you actually do have a significant risk of fire, and you really want to make sure that you understand what that means in terms of your insurance. I mean, my own insurance, the premium was boosted by like 40% this year. Another colleague I was talking to, he had a home, and for 10 years he just paid normal $1,000 a year or whatever. It got jacked up to $5,000 a year. Because no insurer is now going to be working in his neighborhood anymore, even though it's not really in a forest. I mean, there are trees around. There are eucalyptus trees, right? The famous exploding trees, right? Those things, they go up like a matchstick or whatever when they catch on fire. But really, there aren't that many trees around there. Nobody would think that, hey, he's living in a forest, but yet can't get insurance anymore, and it was kicked off into the state fair plan. So there is insurance. No matter where you live, you can get fire insurance, and that's through the state fair plan. And basically, it's a program that the state of California puts out, and they will basically provide fire insurance for you. It's only fire insurance for the structure. It's not any possessions or like water damage or smoke damage or whatever. It's just fire damage. And then you have to buy like a supplemental policy from your normal insurance carrier. So you get a supplemental policy plus a fair plan together. And in the end, yeah, you can have some pretty expensive fire insurance. Talking to my mortgage broker the other day, he was telling me he had a client have to pay $10,000 a year for fire insurance on the property to get the deal closed. And that is, of course, amazingly expensive, right? 10 grand a year. What is that per month? Why, that's like $800 a month just in fire insurance alone. So it's really important that before you buy a property, you check into the availability of fire insurance. And of course, there's a million forms that say that, right? But a lot of people, they're not really reading the fine print on every single form, but yet it is very, very important, especially if you are going to be making a non-contingent offer, right? I mean, a lot of people these days are making non-contingent offers, and they may have checked the availability of fire insurance in the area and said, yeah, or they might say, hey, there's no forest right here. Why would there be an issue with getting fire insurance on the property? Well, the maps which show like your fire risk, right? I mean, they are very sort of granular, right? I mean, like, so in one area, you might have like a low premium, and then like right next door to like a burn zone, you could have a very high premium or a very low premium. There's no rhyme or reason. You really can't really just look at a property and look at the trees surrounding it and say, yeah, fire insurance is not going to be an issue here. If you are a buyer, certainly before you make an offer on a property, I'm going to strongly encourage you to reach out to a insurance broker and see if you can get a conventional insurance for that property. And even if you can, you may find out that even in the conventional insurance, the rates are maybe 2 or 3 times more than you were expecting them to be. So I want to tell you about that. Very important to always make sure before you release any contingency on a property that you're going to buy, and that may mean before you even make an offer on the property, to check into the availability of fire insurance. Now, another thing I want to tell you is, remember my colleague I was just telling you about, how for 10 years he didn't have to pay anything special, and then he got booted off fire insurance and had to go onto the state fair plan, right? That can happen to anybody anytime. So even if you do get a reasonable fire insurance quote, you think everything is good, you know what? Those maps can change. Who knows what's going to happen? Your insurers could stop providing coverage for you, and you might be forced into the fair plan. So, owning a home in California right now, you just have to understand that you may be looking at, a big bump in your insurance premium. But I don't think that's going to be limited to California. I mean, certainly floods are a big thing, right? I mean, a few years ago, there were many areas which were, inundated with increases in flood insurance premiums, oftentimes dramatic increases in flood insurance premiums. And we're seeing the same thing here in California with fire insurance premiums. So I would suggest to you that as a home buyer, especially if you are living, anywhere within 5 or 7 miles or whatever of a forest, that you take that into consideration that, hey, I might be going from $100 a month to $500 or $600 or $700 a month in fire insurance premium. And that would be an important thing just to calculate for yourself when you are, thinking, hey, can I afford a property or not? Now, if you are a seller, one thing I can tell you is you really want to make sure that you tell the buyer, what you are paying right now in fire insurance. That's very important. But you're also going to want to check and see if they're writing new policies in your area, right? Because a lot of times insurance companies won't cancel you, but they will decide not to write any new policies. So maybe you get your insurance from State Farm or whatever, right? And then the buyer wants to go ahead and get State Farm insurance. And guess what? They're told they can't get State Farm insurance. They can't get any insurance. They're going to be on the fair plan, even though you are not. So I would suggest to you that if you're going to sell your home, I don't even care where it is. Could be in downtown Los Angeles, right? Could be in downtown San Francisco, wherever it is. Get an insurance quote from a reputable insurance company and put that into your disclosure package and tell the buyer, hey, you need to get your own quote, but at least I checked. And as of this date, I know it was possible to get insurance on this property. Now, I also want to point out there's this new disclosure form. It's called the Fire Hardening Safety Defensible Area Form. I forget the actual name. It's called Fire Hardening and Defensible Space Advisory Disclosure and Addendum. It's from the California Association of Realtors. Now, this form is required if your property is in a high or very high fire hazard zone. That's right. You must include this form if it's in a high or very high fire hazard zone. And guess what? If your home is in a zone like that and you don't give that form to the buyer before the buyer makes a non-contingent offer, and you supply that form to the buyer after the buyer makes that non-contingent offer, guess what? The buyer automatically has 3 days to review that form if the form is delivered in person, or 5 days to review that form if it is delivered electronically. That gives them basically an automatic contingency on that disclosure form, and they can back out of the contract. So you want to see if your house is in a high or very high fire hazard area if you're a seller, and make sure you include that form in your disclosure package before the buyer writes their offer. That is very important. It's also very interesting because the form itself actually says, hey, check the natural hazard disclosure report, right? So it's a law that when you sell a home in California, you must provide the buyer with a natural hazard disclosure report, which says if they're in a flood zone or earthquake zone or a high fire hazard area zone, right? And a few other things as well, right? A few other nasty environmental type problems, natural hazards, right? Well, the thing is that the other day I was in contract with a client, and we got a copy of that form. Very interesting. The form, it's a computer. I mean, it's a report, the Natural Hazard Disclosure Report. It's a report. Everybody gets one when you buy a house, right? And it's automatically generated by, like a computer system, right? So they have mapping data, right? And they basically will like print this form and they'll say, yes, fault zone, no flood zone, no fire zone, blah, 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 right? In this report, which we got, it said not in a high or very high fire hazard zone, right? And actually it showed the property. It has like a little map, right? And it shows like the various zones, like fault zone, flood zone, whatever, right? And it showed the property being in a wildland fire zone, not a high or very high fire hazard zone. So that very clearly the box was checked, not in one of those areas. Guess what? It was wrong. Actually, it was in a very high fire hazard area. Actually, the insurance brokers we talked to, they were saying, actually, this is one of the highest fire hazard ratings they'd ever seen. You want to make sure by checking with an insurance broker, because they have their own maps, right? They can decide. No one's going to force them to issue an insurance policy, right? They'll decide. All right. Well, I hope that has been some very interesting information for you. And listen, if you wouldn't mind, would you give me a like or a thumbs up if you really did appreciate this information? I know, it's a wild concept, but please do give me a like or thumbs up. And also a comment. If you have any comments, if you have any experience with, getting fire coverage or being denied for fire coverage or having your, insurance premium blossom and explode, I'd love to hear about that. And of course, if you would share this with anybody you know who is thinking about buying or selling a house in California and they might have some kind of insurance issue, which is just about everybody, I bet you they would thank you for sharing this video with them as well. And this would be super, super awesome if you would go ahead and click that subscribe button right there on my YouTube channel and subscribe to me on YouTube. Man, I would be forever in your debt. All right, that's it. That's all I got for this episode of It's a Seb Show. But hey, listen, it's okay. Don't worry. I'll have another episode up again before too long.